of Law degree from the Faculty of Law, Catholic University of Eastern Africa, a Master's of Law from the University of Nairobi in Kenya, and a Diploma in Law from the Kenya School of Law. She also has a PhD in law. Sister Leonida is a certified professional mediator and has lectured at the Catholic University of Eastern Africa, the Tangaza University, and she's equally a practicing advocate of the High Court of Kenya. She majors on property law and family law and is equally involved in various pro bono services. Sister Leonida Kachunge is equally an author who has published various scholarly and literary works. Our second speaker, Dr. Dennis Odinga Okia, is equally a Kenyan who has undergone studies in philosophy, theology, child rights and responsibilities, and African religio culture. He was awarded his PhD from the Kenyatta University following research on African religio culture with a focus on Maasai marriage. He is currently working in administration at the Tangaza University Institute for Social Transformation as a program leader for African Studies and Institute for Social Transformation undergraduate programs. He is a professional member of the ATD Fourth World Institute Research Ethics Committee, as well as the Association for the Promotion of African Studies, acronymed APAS. Having introduced our speakers, I shall lead our participants in a bit of virtual etiquette. I shall request that all participants remain muted to allow us to have a seamless discussion between our speakers for the first 20 minutes of this session, and thereafter we shall open the floor to questions from the floor in order to enrich this conversation. So my first question will be guided to Dr. Okia. Guided on your specialization on African studies, perhaps you could assist this panel as well as the participants online in briefly understanding the social and cultural underpinnings of polygamy in Africa. Over to you, Dr. Dennis. Perhaps you can unmute your microphone. Dr. Dennis? Yes, you're unmuted.
Okay.
Yes,
Sometimes it was refusing to unmute.
No problem. Technology.
Cultural underpinnings.
Yes.
Now, before I go there, I wanted to say one or two things about marriage and family, and they're in the form of questions that I was reflecting on since the time you asked me to be part of this webinar. Is it possible that these three factors are part of the marriage systems or marriage arrangements or marriage choices? The question of economics, which plays a part in polygyny and also polyandry. Is it a question of prestige, which also plays a part both in polygyny and polyandry as well as monogamy? Or is it competition for power? So these three, are they factors that lead people to make choices about their marital relationships? Secondly, I wanted us to clarify the question of the concepts. The webinar is entitled Polygyny, and as earlier on, listening to Dr. Katunge, she made it clear that we are looking at both polygyny and polyandry. Polygyny is for the men, and then polyandry is for the women. Another consideration that I wanted to make here is when we look at these marital relationships, what some people call marital categories. Before we make appraisals or criticize them, are we looking at the point of view of the children that are coming out of these unions? Are we looking at the point of view of the women in these relationships? Are we looking at the point of view of men? So this, I think, will guide us in terms of making appraisal or a kind of making a critique. Then the question of the functional idea of these unions. How do they take place? What are the factors that lead, for example, to people opting for having more than one wife at the same time? I'm not talking about having at the same time. I'm not talking about what is called serial polygyny, where you marry one wife, when you are tired of that one, you divorce and you take another one. I'm talking about having them at the same time, which is the predominant practice in Africa. And what are the reasons behind having these unions? One of the reasons in the past and sometimes at present is the question of the economics, as I mentioned before, that people have so much wealth and they would like other people to be enjoined in this wealth. At the same time, there are people who are attracted to this wealth and they want to get into these unions because they want to enjoy that kind of wealth. Then the question of the structure, how does it work within different contexts within the African context? Actually, I'm talking now about those who are polygynous and would like to join the Catholic Church, and those who have already married within the Catholic Church and have opted to have another marriage. I saw in one of the outputs the question of what is called the customary marriage relationships. Now, having said that, the social context here is about one thing that I've talked about when, for example, in certain indigenous communities within Africa, the woman initiates a move for the husband to get another wife because of certain either medical conditions or that she thinks that there is too much a responsibility in her hands, so she would need a helper. Or secondly, a situation where the male member or the male partner is facing a problem of what is called impotence. And then they would like, the woman is barren, and the question of children comes into play within this marriage. And the woman as well as the man would like to have children. And as I think many of us know, a marriage within the African context is forever. It is not until death do us part. So once you marry a woman and the marriage is certified to have been properly constituted, then it is not possible to have a divorce. So the barren woman takes her position as the first wife, then the second wife comes in to bear children, to be part of that family. I think by way of introducing my line of thinking, I think that would be enough to say for the time being. Are we together?
Yes, we are together, Dr. Odinga. Thank you.
So by the way of introducing myself, that is what I would like.
Very well, Dr. Sister Katunge, in light of Daktari's sentiments, perhaps you could equally give your input by way of introduction.
Sure. You can hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you.
So, good evening, good afternoon, good morning from where you're listening to us. And before I begin, speaking to us, I want first to play this video, and it will help me in my discussion as well as help you to understand where we are. Because I'm supposed to speak about polygamy, but in relation to the teachings of the Catholic Church. So this is a video that I found on YouTube, and it is a celebration of a wedding that took place in some church in Kenya. That was last year. And what you not understand in Swahili is explained to you.
With the agreement that he writes a will dividing his wealth amongst his two families. The Catholic Church in Kiambu says it took 5 years to get clearance for the wedding to take place.
You can hear?
Okay. At the altar, Patrick Ndashu says, "I do" to his wife of over 4 decades, Margaret Nyokabi. In the audience following the proceedings, Kinley is Dina, also wife of Patrick Ndashu. This rare union and wedding took 5 years to actualize. The Catholic Church says the groom, Patrick, a polygamous man, had the desire to return to church and to partake of the sacrament. He also desired a church wedding. Patrick first married Margaret in the 70s. He started a family with her, but later on married Dina and also had a family with her. However, the Catholic Church does not entertain polygamous unions solemnized in church. The two wives agreed that one of them should tie the knot in church with their husband. The chips fell in favor of Margaret, the first wife.
The first wife was still there. He went round, got another one, got children, and now he came back to the first one. And now they have all agreed that he picks one and he picked one.
Kuja tukaitana tukakaa, akanigawia zanga, akanigawia mali, akanigawia yangu na hagawia ule mwingine yake.
Hawakubali kuweka pete watu wawili mbele ya kanisa, lakini tukiwa nje mimi nitatangaza na nionyeshe dunia hawa ni wanawake wangu na wote nawapenda. Watu wako baya. Unaona mtu akikaribia akuwe mgonjwa akuwe na kila kitu. Unaona wanawake wanakuja watatu na watoto wengine wakubwa. Mimi sikutaka kufisha hiyo. Ndio niliweza niko na wanawake wangapi? Wawili. Wanikubali ni au nikae. Lakini wakakuja wakakubali.
Kuna bibi mwingine kitabo bila vita njia.
And after Margaret got her marriage certificate, it was time to celebrate. Both wives taking center stage, surrounded by their children, families, and friends who hailed the unique wedding and marriage ceremony.
Nimefurahia kwa maana yeye ni kama mama. Actually, ni mama yangu juu hata venye tunakaa pamoja, ameniangalia wakati nilipata mtoto na kila kitu.
Okay. So I'm here. Basically, what you've seen is what happened last year in December. And that happened in Kenya, where a man who had 2 wives chose one over the other to join hands in marriage with her. And as you all know, there have been debates that are going around about the understanding of the Catholic Church and how she actually speaks or what she says about marriage, and to be specific, on polygamy. What we know is, last year in October, when the first phase, the international first phase of the Synod of Synodality ended, there came out a document that we call the Synthesis Report of the Synod of Synodality. Chapter 16, number Q of that document spoke about polygamy. And specifically, it was a call to SECAM, this symposium of the Episcopal Conference of Bishops of Africa and Madagascar, to go back home to Africa from Rome and discuss on the best way in which they would bring back to faith, or they would accompany those people who are polygamous and they are planning to come back to faith. And it is here where actually the discussion began. What is the church in Africa going to do? We had a research that we carried out as PactPan, where we had interviews with those people who are Christians, they are Catholics, and they are living in polygamous relationships. And the reason why we did research was to listen to them and to hear what they have to say about their status as polygamous Catholics. So to say, because they are Catholics and they're polygamous. And their take was very simple. What do they want? We want to be readmitted back to the church. And readmission back to the church is not that the church has sent them away. It's because the church has, in quotes, set them aside when it comes to the reception of the sacrament, especially the sacrament of Eucharist. Why? They have not Christianized their marriages. And what Dr. Dennis was saying is that we have a situation here where one is a Catholic married in the Catholic Church with one wife, and they add a second wife. By this, then, the first wife continues to receive the sacraments, but the man is cut out of the cord, and with the second wife, they cannot receive the sacraments. The second one is a man who is already married to 2 wives or 3, and they want to convert to become Catholics. By this, then, when you come, the church has a place for you. The place is very simple. You can become a Catholic, but the conditions to this are given in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, number 2387. I read only one paragraph. This is what it says. The predicament of a man who decided to convert to the gospel is obliged to repudiate one or more wives with whom he has shared years of conjugal life is understandable. Meaning, if you have 2 wives or 3, and you want to join the Catholic Church, and you want to join the Catholic Church by becoming a real Catholic in the sense of you partaking the sacraments, then you need to do away with 1 or 2 wives, and you keep only one so that you can be joined together in marriage, and by this, you can partake of the sacraments. Now, the problem is here. These people, some of them claim, we did not know that this is what the church calls for. We thought that I'm a man, I have wives, and I want to join the Catholic Church, I can just walk in and I'm accepted. Others say, I am married to the Catholic Church and I've solemnized my marriage with my first wife. I have married another one using another system of marriage, maybe civil, go to the Attorney General to be joined there, or even customarily, you've been joined together in marriage and actually you are legally married. Now, if the church says, I do away with my wife, who is legally married through whatever system other than the Christian, what is going to happen to this woman? What is going to happen to the children born of these marriages? Dennis was asking. And this is where we have a challenge and a problem. Remember, the Catholic Church has 3 sources of teachings. For us to understand the Catholic Church, you need to go to the scriptures. You need to go to the magisterium, and you need to go to the tradition. Scriptures, magisterium, and tradition. When you look at the scriptures, for instance, speaking to marriage, the book of Genesis, chapter 1, says, created man and a woman. The 2 shall become one, where the man shall leave his father and mother, and with the woman become one. But the same Old Testament, we have instances where some of the good friends of God had more than one wife, even to the extent of someone having 700 concubines. But these people were still friends to God. So someone is out arguing, if the best friends of God in the Old Testament had more than 2 wives, who am I not to have more than 2 wives? Why is the Catholic Church saying no to this yet? I want to become and I want to belong. When we got the New Testament, Jesus Christ comes in. The Gospel of Matthew 5:17, he says, I did not come to abolish the law and the prophets, but to fulfill it. But still, he makes reference to the book of Genesis. He says, time has come that a man will leave his father and mother with a wife shall become one. And by this, then the church teaches that marriage is monogamous, not polygamous. You cannot have 2 wives. You cannot have 2 husbands. You just keep one. And not this as not at a time, because in essence, polygamy is explained as a case where a man has more than 2 wives at the same time. At the same time, you keep 2. Then the question would be like, oh, so I can have 2 at different times? 2 at different times will happen only if one will die, and then you will continue picking the other to live with. Or if one dies, then you can join in union with another one, and then you can marry her. So by this, the position of the church still remains that marriage is monogamous. 1 man, 1 woman. And by this then, when the people bring in the debate of, now, if marriage is a union between a man and a woman, and a man has 2 wives, why can the Catholic Church accept? Because in the course of our deliberations, actually with those who are in polygamous relationships, some were saying, sister, how comes we have the Catholic Church still accepting our offertory? How comes some of us are leaders in the Catholic Church? How comes our wives are also taking part in the celebrations, in the ministries, taking part in the leadership of the church? How comes the church is denying us the possibility of receiving the sacraments? That is okay. In Amoris Laetitia, Pope Francis was very clear. He said there are people who are in irregular relationships. And I say irregular because if it's regular, it has to be what is accepted. Irregular is not accepted. So to say, if Amoris Laetitia speaks of one of the irregular instances is in being in a polygamous relationship. Okay. Now, Pope Francis says, you can take part in the church, accept these people, because by bringing them close to the church, then you'll be helping them to unwind and to get to understand and say, yes, we need to follow what the law of the church teaches so that we can become partakers in the services that the church is offering as such. The church has no problem by you giving them what you have, like offertory. You can give money, you can give your cows, but you have to follow the rules and regulations that the church has set. And then you realize we are now debating what is the best way? How can we bring back to faith those who are not in the regular kind of faith that we want them to be? Those who are living polygamous marriages, how do we call them back to church? Now, we are now in the course of working hard to see how best we can help them. Helping them one way is very simple. Please, if you want to become a member of the Catholic Church and you're in a polygamous relationship, can you follow what the church says? Leave one at the expense of the other. Or the other option, if there are two, wait until one dies and then you can pick one. But the problem is, if you die before the two, what will happen? It's a problem, actually. And it's not a war that we are fighting, but it's kind of a way through which we are trying to work to see how best these will work. One, I think, and I call upon the pastors, the priests, the ministers. One, when you're instructing people in the context of preparing them for marriage, please, can you tell them the true position of the Catholic Church? Some are claiming, oh, I did not know. It's okay, you might not have known. But you as a pastor, tell them you are joining in marriage. It's only one man, one woman. Tomorrow, if you add another one, we cut you off because you don't belong. Remember, the Council of Trent was very clear on this, says there is nothing like polygamy because the moment you come here and you're polygamous, let there be the anathema seat. We are going to cut you off. Anathema seat is to cut off. This is one thing the pastor should remind the people. Please keep one wife, one woman. I mean, one man. And this became a challenge also because when these people are coming and they say, we did not know, the pastor now is left to ask himself, now, what are we supposed to do? What we're supposed to do is inform them. Secondly, you have to remember that some of these people are just assuming that they should have been taught by somebody. But some of them are aware. And we are saying, some people enter into these relationships even without knowing. You impregnate someone's girl or someone's, someone's daughter, and you marry them as a second wife because you've no option. So let us just get to know that if we, or as agents of evangelization, if the pastors will teach these people and get them to understand the right way to follow and what the church teaches, then we'll not have problems as such. And also we need, and I ask this question, I need to be informed maybe by the pastors or even the laity who are here. When is the last time you heard in your parish priest or even the pastor coming and talking about polygamy and speaking to people, telling them, please, polygamy is not allowed in the church? Someone told me it has never happened. Why? Because we assume so many things. It's time we do what we call liturgical catechesis. Liturgical catechesis has to do with, in the context of celebration of the, sacraments like Eucharist, you just tell the people, please, now, today the readings are not about polygamy, but I want to remind you of something, that you are not allowed to have more than one wife in the Catholic Church. You can even do this in the context of celebration of the sacrament of matrimony. Remind even those who are married, please, marriage is monogamous, not polygamous in the Catholic Church. We also need to bring about an end of the tension which is existing, because there's a lot of tension, by the way. And the tension is occasioned by the fact that now we are discussing this and someone says, well, I would rather leave the Catholic Church and join another church where they accept polygamy. The Catholic Church will not tell you not to go. But you as a pastor, you need to reduce this tension by journeying with these people in polygamous relationships. Pastoral care is very important. Pastoral care is very important because when you journey with them pastorally, you educate them, you talk to them, you tell them what they're supposed to do and not to do, then they will feel embraced and accepted. Because the moment you tell them you can go, maybe your church has more than 20 polygamous men who will be left in the church. It will pose a challenge. So let us join with them pastorally. Let us take care of them. Let us reduce the tensions. Let us tell them what the Catholic teaches. And at the same time, in the preparations for marriages for the pastors, please, let us make sure that we tell them the truth and what the church teaches, so that by the end of the day, if someone goes into a polygamous marriage, they will do this fully aware of the consequences that are awaiting them in the Catholic Church, because marriage still remains monogamous, not polygamous. Today we say we write new policies. There is no need of new policies because the law is already there. If we are going to write new policies and we change the code of canon law, which says marriage is monogamous, then it will mean we have also to change the Bible to say it's one man and one woman as Jesus taught, and as we have in the book of Genesis. So what are we going to change? It's changing our lifestyles. And of course, the approach to the pastoral challenges that we have should be up to date so that we may inform as we help them towards coming back to faith. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sister Katunge. From the issues you have raised, there is certainly a conundrum for the church to consider, especially in light of pastoral care. I want to go back to Dr. Odinga with respect to a couple of things Sister Katunge has raised. Dr. Odinga, generally speaking, and as understood in the African context, polygamy is not only a type of marriage, but it is also considered a value system, socially, culturally, and equally religiously. In fact, one might argue that polygamy is the foundation of faith in Africa. So in light of what Sister Katunge has said, do you think there is a discord with Christianity, with the faith? Or is it that the faith has a discord with how we understand the family to be built in the African context?
Well, there is some, you can call it a discord, yes. But here also we are talking about, are we saying, which I think might be a controversial thing to say, are we saying that the Catholic Church has a monopoly of deciding what is a value? This is a big question that I may want to raise here. Because even the values that the Catholic Church are putting forward are some values that are coming from certain cultural contexts. And Sister Katunge has brought up a very powerful debate there about the Old Testament. And this discussion of the whole Old Testament, from the time Christianity came into being, there's already been a kind of discomfort among many Africans. I think many of you are aware about one of the reasons why we are talking about African instituted churches, and some people call them African independent churches. One of the reasons for these breakaways was this value system. So they said, okay, we want to be Christian, but we also want to be African. So then they move out and they do their Christianity the way they know it best. So I mean, this is how I would want to respond to your question about commenting on what Sister Katunge has just said.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Odinga. Before I ask the next question, perhaps I would like to tell the participants that as the conversation is ongoing, should you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box, or you can await for the two final questions that will be posed to the presenters before we can open the floor to questions. You can raise your hand at that moment and pose your question. Now, Sister Katunge, in the synthesis report that you spoke about, African priests and pastors were encouraged to devise creative pastoral ways of reaching out to those in polygamous unions. Now, you and I will agree that both amongst the laity and especially amongst the religious, we know of priests who are serving, we know of nuns who are serving brothers, deacons who actually come from polygamous unions. In your opinion, who are a product of polygamous unions? In your opinion, where would the church's tiebreak be in respect of those serving already in the church and are children born of polygamous unions?
When I was growing up, I remember one young man from my village saying that he went to my, parish priest who was a missionary, and he was told he cannot join the seminary because his father was polygamous. Then in 2015, another student came to me at the university where I was working and told me that he wanted to become a priest, but when he went to one of the dioceses, names withheld, he was told he cannot be admitted because his mother was the father was in a polygamous marriage. Well, it's okay. And I have to accept that because this was then. If today I come from a polygamous family and I'm a religious, my father who's polygamous has nothing to do with me. And my vocation is different from his vocation of being a polygamous man. And I say this because others have suffered the consequences of coming from polygamous relationships before. But I think this cannot happen again today. And we have a good number of them, actually many priests and sisters will say it, that they come from polygamous relationships. Their parents were polygamous. And it's okay because at the end of the day, God has called you and you belong. Now the challenge will come in where you come from a polygamous marriage, family, your father is polygamous, or, and then when you as a preacher, you're a pastor or your sister, you're talking to people, you feel as if this is haunting you. You don't even want to talk about it because this is a relationship, the family where you come from. If you are a pastor from a family that is polygamous, you should be happy that at least God has called you from that family, which the church terms as an irregular kind of a family as such, because you will have all reasons now to talk to people with a bit of experience and authority, telling them, well, I'm a product of such a family, but it is not what the church teaches because it is not a monogamous family as the church teaches as such. But at the same time, I will not have a problem where one is becoming or is becoming a priest and they come from such families. The only challenge now, Akinyi, that we have is the case where the children will suffer because of coming from these relationships, and then a man of the family chooses one wife and leaves the other, and the children will suffer because maybe they'll be denied their inheritance. Some of them will not be given property. Some of them will be told that they're outcasts, they don't belong because their mothers are not married anymore. This is the only time I will have a problem. But becoming a priest or a sister from a polygamous family is not a problem because it's not your fault to be in that family. Is a creation of your father that you find yourself here. So you have to bear with the consequences, especially when some are tortured psychologically, emotionally, and even sometimes spiritually because they come from irregular families.
Thank you, Sister Katunge. Back to Dr. Odinga. There is a pressing question that has arisen from the discussion, and perhaps you would give your sentiments around what you think ought to be the new policies that the church should consider consider in the treatment of polygamous unions, especially within the African context. We might want to say polygamy is going away, but it is not going away. So it is something priests and pastors have to deal with on a daily basis in their outreach programs. So what new policies do you think the church should consider in their treatment of polygamous unions?
Well, I think talking about policy in terms of treatment is like telling people you are in and you are out. So how can you be in the church and you are outside the church so that you are treated as if you are some appendage to the church? The question of policy, as I said earlier, is about listening very keenly. And Sister Katungi has said there was a problem of, there is a process of listening. And actually, I am one of the people who are very happy about this synod on synodality. Very happy about it. And I've always told my students that the African church sometimes sleeps on a revolution. What this process is asking us to do is to put our issues on the table. And one of the issues, and in response to your question, is you cannot be in the church and outside the church at the same time. So when you're talking only about pastoral, that means that you take care of these people as special people within the church, but you don't put them within the mainstream of the church. I think this goes against the question of communion in the church. And this also goes against the African idea of communion. You cannot put some food on the table and you say, this ones can eat, this ones can watch. So this is how I will respond to that question of policy. So you can't have a policy that puts some people outside the main bracket. And the trend that I have seen, even 2 weeks ago, I was talking to a Catholic priest who he narrated to me the kind of response he got after a sermon on Sunday. As Sister Katunge was saying, the priests don't talk about it. They do. They talk about for polygyny as such, and most Catholics are aware of what the church regards as the position of the church on having more than one wife. So they are aware of that, but at the same time, they are saying that in that eventuality, what then happens? Do I stand outside and participate only nominally, or do I participate fully? I think these are the issues that should be put on the table, and the Catholic Church should say, no, if you are a polygynous, you are out. If you are monogamous, you are in. So this halfway house leads us to some situations that are coming up elsewhere. The German church was pushing very strongly the question of LGBTQ. I don't know where that has reached within the European and American church. So we have to decide here, are you within the rules or you are outside the rules, or there is some room for some inculturated marriage and family arrangement? This is my response to that policy question.
Thank you, Dr. Odinga. Perhaps, sister, you could weigh in with your sentiments.
Yes, sure. You see, I hear what doctor says. Some priests talk about it, but I speak from my own experience. The last time I heard a priest talk about polygamous relationships was not even, it was in the context of celebration of a marriage, not on a normal day, if I may say. But some, others don't, but the call is we should, as pastors and agents of evangelization, take care of this because people need to hear about this. But at the same time, the problem that I have is is not that they know they don't know. The problem that I have is how to get out of it. Because as Dr. Dennis says, you should not have people by the fence and others who are in. If you need to be in, you need the wedding gown. And for you to have the wedding gown, actually, is for you to know that. I mean, it's for you to have solemnized your marriage. And if you know that you've not done it, then you'll not be admitted the wedding feast of the Lord. And you see, St. Paul says, we hear some of you are coming to partake of the body of Christ, and you're not ready because you've not prepared yourself. You need to prepare yourself. And of course, the church has set rules and regulations. It's true. You are coming from the African, religious tradition where you can have polygamous marriage, and you're joining a context, a church where this is not allowed. Or even better, I can say you're coming in a church already that has rules and regulations that you need to follow. And the church was very lenient on this. That's why she says, if you have two and you need to come to us, then we give you an option. Leave one and come, we take one. Or it may be hard for some to take it. And that's why some comfortably are in the church and they say, I will keep my 3 wives or my 2 wives. I'm not letting them go. When I die, God is the judge. He will take care of us. At the same time, we need to know that accompany them, helping them holistically to embrace the rules and regulations that have been set is very important. Well, I had at some point, Dennis, I like when, I loved when you said that, Christianity was born in a certain culture. Yes, it came from a certain culture. And the question that I'm actually getting right now as I read to write the book on polygamy that we are working on is monogamy a Western way of life, or is it a Christian way of life? Did the missionaries introduce to us what they had in their own cultures as people, not as Christians? But then you see, no, they introduced to us what was found in the scriptures as it is. They introduced to us what the church teaches. And this is a reason as to why we should embrace what they have. But new policies coming in, there might be a possibility. But in 2024, as we sit, there is nothing much that maybe can change other than following what we have. I managed to call someone who went for the synod of synodality. They are still there. And this morning they said, unfortunately, the issue of polygamy was not discussed. So it's upon us as a church in Africa to discuss this and see the way forward.
Thank you. My final question. Yes, Dr. Odinga, go
Sorry,
ahead.
before your question, just a reflection on what Sister Katunga is saying. I don't want to sound like we are having a kind of a tug of war here, but in church history, a lot of things have changed. So church policy changes, and this is the time to change if there is room for that. Secondly, I would like to say that polygyny is not the norm for the African. It is an exceptional case where those who qualify and to become polygynous, you must satisfy certain conditions within the African context. That's why I started by talking about economy, then the question of prestige, so that you are seen as somebody who is able to manage their affairs, both economically, but also in terms of your moral upbringing and well-being of your children. That's how you qualify to be polygynous. Thirdly, are you able to manage competition? For example, in my language, I come from the Luo community. The literal translation of polygamy is jealousy. You talk about your co-wife as your jealousy. So are you able to manage this competition? Thirdly, polygyny, we must say, and this is very clear from the African point of view, that is not a male affair. There are cases where women enter into these relationships willingly and very much knowingly, and they are happy to enter into those relationships. I know many relationships of some people would sometimes disparage polygyny as an affair of people who are women who are uneducated. There are several women who even have PhD degrees who have opted to get into polygynous unions. So is it a question of prestige? Is it a question of also what is called having security? So these are issues that when we are discussing the question of polygyny, we have to bring these things, all of them on the table. And I go back to where I started. What is the benefit for the children? What is the benefit for the women? What is the benefit for the man? And then finally, I would say, as in terms of the question that Bishop Sarpong asked long time ago, is it possible to be truly Christian and truly African? This is the question that we are asking here by discussing this synod on synodality. Is it possible to be truly Christian and truly African? This is the question that I want to pose, because this is a webinar. I know there will be people who will have a chance to maybe try to tackle that kind of position. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the two speakers. As we ponder on that question that Dr. Dennis has posed, perhaps your final remarks from both speakers before I open the floor to question. I can see there are a couple of questions already streaming in through the chat, and we have about two hands raised. So I shall begin with you, Sister Katunge. Any final remarks?
Yeah, what I want to say, we are living in a world of possibilities. And the world of possibilities that we are living in today, anything can happen. I say you can sleep at night, and the church teaches that we do not, we do not admit anyone who is in a polygamous relationship into the sacraments of the church. And then in the morning you wake up and the church says people cannot be admitted into the sacraments. So what am I saying? Let us be, positive, and let us just know that for now, the position remains as it is. It's one man, one woman. In case the changes take place tomorrow, then we go by that. But as for now, even the question of policies, which I like best, well, we can change, for example, the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and maybe we can make amendments on the Code of Canon Law. But now we ask, are we going to change the scriptures? Well, by way of application, but so much is left to be decided, and we have a lot to do as pastoral agents if we need to address these in a way that is going to respond to the questions that those people in polygamous relationships are raising.
Thank you, Sister Katunge. Dr. Dennis, final remarks?
Yes, I am very grateful that this is taking place. I would like to urge all of us who believe in the communion of the Catholic Church to take these discussions seriously. I have noticed that many African people, especially those in the clerical area, shy away from discussing these very sensitive issues for reasons that I may not want to say here, but I would like to urge all of us to be able to discuss these issues in an open and from a well-grounded point of view. We have many experts on marriage, both on indigenous marriages, what the law here in Kenya calls customary marriage, but also on church marriages or Catholic marriages. If we sit down together going back to the question you asked me about policy and also the direction to go, I think we are going to come out with some way of becoming truly African and truly Christian. And I would like to reiterate here that there are a lot of things in the Catholic Church that are hangovers from other cultures. I do not know why sometimes we look at African culture as a second-rate culture that is not able to infuse certain radical changes within the manifestation of our faith within that particular context. I think those are my final remarks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dennis Odinga. So we shall open the floor to questions. I shall interchange between the hands raised and the questions which have been posed in the chat box. So I shall first start with Reverend Father Isaac Atta Mensah from Ghana. You have your hand up.
Yeah, so good evening and thanks for this discussion. In fact, I've been following and I really love the discussion and then the input from both doctor and sister. I'm very happy this discussion is going on because it is high time that we need to find the middle way. The African theologians and the people who have done anthropology, that we will try to see how best we can discuss dispassionately the issue of polygyny in Africa vis-a-vis our faith as Catholics. And so I am happy this kind of discussion is going on. For me, and what I have studied so far and what I have known from the classroom during anthropology and also from our culture, the social studies, and from our cultural perspective, what I know, and even from I am a Ghanaian and my tribe is an Akan tribe, and even among the Akans, polygyny, even though it is being practiced, but as doctor said, it is something that is not it is something that is not really the case, because one of the proverbs with the Akan says that a man who has plenty wives, goes to bed with an empty stomach, which means that polygyny is not something that was highly cherished by the African context, but due to one or two things that this thing was established, there are so many reasons that account for the establishment of polygyny. And so I would love that the time has come that the African theologians, together with the canon lawyers, those who have, especially those who are well versed with the canon concerning marriage, will come to fine tune how best we can help. Because sometimes some of our women who are in this polygamous relationship, is through no fault of theirs, and yet we deny them the Holy Communion. So for me, the time has come that we should fashion our own way of bringing these issues to bear, because many women, we are denying many women, they have not done anything. It's just that their husband has gone to marry another one, and therefore because of that, the woman cannot go to receive communion. For me, the time has come that African theologians and then those who are canon lawyers should come together and see how best we can help, especially those people who are in these situations. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Isaac. There is a question that has been posed to Sister Leonida. This question is from Beatrice Ndungu from Kenya, and she asks, in the polygamous situation, can this be corrected by admitting all of them back to the sacraments in a Josephite marriage arrangement, because at the heart of the matter, these people, all they need is to come back to the Eucharist. I will actually ask both Sister Katunge and Dr. Dennis to weigh in on that.
Oh, well, you see, Josephite marriage is a spiritual marriage. It's a spiritual, it's a chaste marriage where a man is married to a woman and they don't have sexual relationships. So a case where a man and two wives, let's say polygamy or polyandry, either way, and they need to be readmitted back to the church, they cannot, as the position is right now, well, I mean, they cannot be accepted to receive the sacraments and then they live in a Josephite kind of a marriage, because the position is they should solemnize their marriage. If at all, they have to be readmitted back to the sacraments. And I tend to feel that, well, this position of the church was okay at that time and point when they spoke of Josephite marriage, but this can only happen in the case of the other wife now who is left out if the man makes a choice of one. Say, if today Mr. X is married to Madam A and B, he chooses A at the expense of B. Then B can now be readmitted back to the sacraments because she's no longer a wife to this man. She's no longer a man to this wife, a wife to this man. So this is the position. But again, this is a point of discussion. And when I started my presentation, I showed you a video that is a wedding that took place in Kenya last year. And this arrangement, for it to happen, it took 5 years for the priest actually to finalize and have these people come together in a marriage in the church, and the other wife to accept, yes, I'm out of this marriage right now, I can mind my businesses. So it's possible, but it takes time and it's a process that calls for a lot of discernment. At the same time, that calls the church actually to say, yes, this can happen, but not justified marriage in the case where the man and the two wives will still live together in the same apartment, and then they claim that they are living a Josephite kind of marriage. I think there's a lot of suspicion. There's a lot of suspicion behind it.
Thank you, Sister Katunge. Dr. Okia, any input?
Yes, I just want to ask a question again. Why does somebody become polygynous and is still he or she, as the question has gone, they know they are Catholic, they know polygyny is not acceptable, but they want, I mean, this idea of coming back does not sit well with me. People join the Catholic Church and they don't leave. So the question of having Holy Communion, I think that can be addressed in a case-to-case, case-by-case situation. Our pastors who are here, one of them has spoken and I see others, they are very much on the ground, and my sentiments earlier still hold. They are the ones to tell us, how do we deal with this issue? Because they come across these people every other day. It is not something that happens once and it is a case that you can kind of just run away from. And I think one of the reasons why this is coming up in the synod is because it is something that is alive, it is something that is happening, it is something that needs to be taken care of once and for all. So what I would want to say here finally as a response to that question is, when somebody is in a polygynous union and they desire to remain in the Catholic Church, we must find a way of sorting that out. And we can only sort that out by serious study of the situation. And as I said, we have many experts in the Catholic Church. One of the reasons why I love being in the Catholic Church is that it has many experts and many people who know different aspects of life. And what sometimes beats my thinking is that these people are not able to come together. Sometimes not because they don't want together, but because the church sometimes creates a barrier for allowing these people to come together, to put their hands together and say, okay, and put their heads together and say, okay, what is the way forward out of this issue? And especially the church in Africa. The church in Europe and America, I think they're doing very well in terms of putting experts to look at these questions. It is time for the church in Africa also to do the same. And I think it requires certain resources and certain openness to ideas that may not sit well with policy, ideas that may not sit well with doctrine, and ideas that may not sit well with the way the Catholic Church has been brought down to us in traditionally. So it requires certain courage to be able to go out of the norm and discuss issues openly and also with some kind of expert eyes and scholarly input. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Okia. I shall now come to Chioma, Professor Chioma Asuzu from Nigeria. Your hand is up. You may unmute yourself and ask your question or give your input.
Thank you very much. I want to start by thanking the speaker, Sister Leoninda, and Dr. Okia for actually critically reflecting on the issue of polygamy this evening for us. And in our units, we decided to bring this, advocate it, and talk about polygamy and its impacts in the church. So I want to thank them again for this teaching this evening. And I want to start by making my contribution by going through what Sister Leoninda showed us a video, which is very impactful. I've witnessed this type of thing before, seen where it has happened somewhere in Nigeria. And also trying to explain to us that what she's going to talk to us this evening is taken from the teachings of the scriptures, the magisterium, and the tradition. And that caps it all. And during her reflective analysis, I agreed with most of the things she told us this evening. And I want to add that the church, our Lord Jesus Christ said during the Passion Week, is about the truth. The truth does not change to become lie. It's about the truth. And even though we know this type of thing has happened, it does not make us to say, oh, because it happened this way, then it is not the truth. The Catholic Church stands for the truth, and it will continue to proclaim the truth to the end of the day. And so what we need to do is, do we look after these people pastorally? These people that are in this type of marriage, what we continue to tell them about the truth and what it means for them to embrace the church and be received properly. And if the other person is, oh, how can we emotionally journey with them? Because some people have actually done this. With the video that Sister showed us, it has happened sometime in Nigeria, where a man is convinced about this is what to do. And he went ahead and did what he's supposed to do. And the children will continue to be his. And there is a way of going through all this process, okay, to make sure that everybody will be happy at the end of the day. But the truth will always be the truth. I want to stop it here. And maybe other people have other things to contribute. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chioma. I can see there's still two more hands raised up from Professor Michael Asuzu from Nigeria and Father. So I will come back to you. Let me first go back to the chat. There is a question, and either of the two speakers can weigh in on this question. And the question is, what would be the position of the second wife and her children when the first wife is favored to marry in the church with their husband? Would they live separately or still remain within the same household?
Okay, the second wife or the one who is left out becomes a sister to this guy, becomes like a sister to this guy. And by this, you are set free. You can go and marry another man, or you can live there, but still not under the same roof. The children remains children of the men. That's what Professor Chomas just said, and they should be taken care of. They should be taken care of because they belong to you and they remain with you. But the reality is many people or many women may not want to hear this, because who is this woman who has maybe 5 children who will go to marry another man? Who is this man who will accept this woman who has 5 children? You know, it's actually is a give and take, but at the same time, it's not easy to comprehend. And what it calls for is a lot of preparation, because if it has happened to others, like the video that I showed you, then it can also happen to you. But the thing is, you are going to remain with this man, not in any kind of a marital relationship, may it be sexually. I don't know another relationship that I can name here, but you should be sure that if you are helping them as a pastor, or even as any person helping this couple in order to convert their marriage from polygamous to monogamous, then you need to follow the right law, the right, the right channels, so that tomorrow no one says that I have been sent out of my marriage by the church, because some can turn back, say it is the church that forced me to do this. Secondly, there is a problem. And what is the problem? The country where I come from, Kenya, we have 5 systems of marriage: Christian marriage, civil marriage, Mohammedan marriage, the Buddhist marriage, and we have the Christian, Buddhist, and the Hindu marriage. There are 5 systems of marriage. Of those 5 systems of marriage, 2 of them are polygamous: customary marriage and the Mohammedan marriage. So imagine a scenario where, one, this man is married to the 2 wives in a customary marriage, which is legally accepted in my country. So if this man is married to wife A and B, both of them legally, customarily, and he has to leave one for the other, will the second wife you are leaving behind not be left in a kind of a divorce state? They are so divorced state, because if she was legally married and you are leaving her, are you divorcing her? And what are the repercussions? What are the consequences? So I think we need to take it, not lightly, but seriously, such that tomorrow it cannot be a repercussion on the person who is, engaging themselves in this kind of conversion of their marriage. And that's why I loved when Dr. Dennis is asking the question, what of the children? Because also, this can be a kind of the children also being left out with their mother, and they may also suffer the consequences. So we need to handle this with a bit of care, depending on the system of the law where you come from, because the legal bit of it, that's civil laws, and also the ecclesiastical laws, they have to meet at some point.
Thank you, Sister. Dr. Tari, would you like to weigh in?
First, I would like to comment on the speaker who spoke, the professor. Jesus is the truth, the way, and the life. That's how I would respond to what you have said about the truth. It is not only the truth, it's also the way and the life. So let us not leave those behind when we talk about the Jesus as the truth. Secondly, this question of solemnizing marriage. solemnizing African marriage is also, as far as I know, in the Kenyan context, is accepted by the church. That is why some of the pastors who have been at it for a long time will ask you, have you gone to see the elders? Mm. So here's a situation where you are telling a woman, 2, 3, 4 of them, that now what you did with the elders does not count. So then you walk away, or you stay aside, and somebody else continues with what they did with the elders, but within the having a wedding gown and all manner of niceties that come with it. So I think either way, there are issues. Another issue there is about the idea of African marriage, and I said it at the beginning. Marriage is not about until death do us part in the African context. Marriage is forever. Until or unless something happens that actually nullifies that marriage, but it is very rare. What I would like to say here now, coming to my mind, is that, and this question I've asked before in other fora, what period does the Catholic Church take to prepare people for a wedding or for marriage within the church? Some people told me 3 months, some said 6 months. But indigenously, marriage was not something that you entered into just in a short period of time. I know at the moment we are living in times when the things are really changing, and changing very fast, and not changing for the better. Marriage is a serious undertaking that you take a long time to prepare. You go through several, those who are called significant others, from both families, from both the bridegroom's family and the bride's family. And these people come together to form a community, a new community. So how do you tell a woman who is married as a second, third, or fourth wife or fifth wife that now we are breaking that communion, and now you can find another communion because one of the co-wives has been wedded in the Catholic Church? I leave that as a rhetorical question. I don't want to give a perspective on this, but whoever is going to discuss this within other fora should have this in mind, that marriage in the African context is forever. It is not until death do us part. That is what creates what is called the institution of the care of the widow. It is abused in many African contexts, but its original idea was that when a woman gets married within certain community, they have security, they have tenure of life, and they can stay there for the rest of their life. And whether the husband is alive or dead, they are part of that family. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Okia. Back to those who have their hands raised up. Professor Michael Asuzu, the floor is yours.
Where I am is just past midday. So good evening, since most of you are in Africa. Good evening.
Good evening.
I don't know where you got the professor you added to my name. It's obviously not on the thing there. I haven't met you before. I'm a very lay person who has retired from government work for quite a long time. And I talk from purely a lay person's point of view. I like to advise, I like to observe that There's no single African traditional marriage. Even in Nigeria, Igbo marriage is different from Yoruba marriage. It's different from Tiv marriage. So African traditional marriage is different. It varies from one place to the other. In some places, it lasts for a long time. In some places, it can just happen in their own culture. That's number one. Number two, what we are discussing, marriage, is something that is culture bound. Incidentally, Christianity evolved out of Judaism. Nobody can have more polygamy than in Judaism. And Christ refined it, and it became the Christian culture of marriage. It's different from Judaic marriage. And it's not English. It's not white people who brought Christianity to us. It has nothing to do with them. Christianity has nothing to do with them and their culture. Christianity is as Christ, who is the truth, the way, and the life. The culture of the West currently is secular humanism. They have their scriptures. Started with Humanist Manifesto No. 1, 1933. Revised Humanist Manifesto No. 2 of 1973. And Humanist Manifesto No. 3 of 2003. Probably by 2033, they will produce another one, since they're doing it every 30 years. The scripture is clear. That's what Germany and Switzerland and Austria and those people, that's what they are following. Nobody should go and start quarreling with other people's culture. Welcome them. Let your own culture be shown in its full light. Anybody who wants to come can come. If he doesn't want to come, he can go. Every culture that allows polygamy allows divorce. I don't know any culture that allows polygamy that doesn't allow divorce. So, because they're all contracts. Marriage in most cultures in the world are contracts. Christian marriage is a covenant in the whole world of difference. And people should know that. So if you want to join a culture, you join the culture. If you don't want to join the culture, stay where you are. We respect each other. So if there are things that are good in the culture you are coming from originally that are compatible with the world, carry all of it and you enrich it. So I think that Africans who are going to this synodality, whatever it is, in Europe, should charitably make it clear that where the Westerners are talking from is called secular humanism. Study their scripture and show them the Christian scripture. Show them the Judaic scripture. Everybody else have scriptures or code of their culture, and they follow it. So if you want to be Christian, you be Christian. Each person coming from polygamy, their circumstances are different. If they are 100, all the 100 are different. There's, one who came out of polygamy to become Christian, he had 2 wives. He chose the younger wife by agreement. They agreed the younger wife should be wedded. The older wife has the older children, and by Igbo culture, those ones have seniority, they have senior rights than the wife he married in the Christian church. So when they come to the traditional society, the children of the older wife, who wasn't wedded in the church, she's past menopause anyway, so what's she doing with sex culturally, most people? So it's not a problem with them. But the children have senior rights than the one you married with. So each one should be dealt with in their circumstances. There's no one answer that fits all of them. And finally, when things are clear and they have high value, people of serious mind go there. And that's what we should be looking for. Usually where there's crowd, there's no seriousness. There's nothing serious happening there. So we shouldn't be looking for crowd to come. If the crowd come, fine, and they have quality. But if we begin to model up things, we won't win. And let people like me, we just sit in my house and worship God there. It should be clear to anybody talking. Let issues be very clear as Christ taught it. Let us be charitable, not quarrel or condemn anybody. If you want to be coming to church, but you don't want to be a communicant because you don't want to follow the rules of the food, you will chase him out. Will you tell him not to come to church? He will come. But when you are entering the banquet, if you are not wearing the wedding gown, you won't go there now. You stay where the other people who came there stay. It's as simple as that. We can all be happy with ourselves. Anyway, I'm sorry if I spoke too much, but I thought to bear my mind. I've enjoyed the speaking. Sister, thank you. Doctor, thank you very much. Moderator, thank you very much. God bless all of you. Ayakata, ayakata, as we say in Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Mr. Suzu. Input well taken. We shall go to the last question in the chat box before I give an opportunity to Father Matthew and Father Thaddeus, who have their hands raised up. And this question has been posed to both of the speakers. Can any of the speakers kindly provide a comprehensive update on the issue of irregular marital partnerships as it relates to the ongoing synod on synodality? What specific questions have been asked and a synopsis of the conversations so far? Have the African Bishops' Conference spoken on this matter?
Well, last year I said when they compiled the report after the synod, chapter 16, number Q, did ask the bishops in Africa, SECAM, to accompany those people who are coming back to faith. And those people specifically, they spoke of people in polygamous marriages, meaning there are those who are, in polygamous marriages, they want to convert their marriage to monogamous. Then the bishops were told to devise ways through which to accompany them. We expected this to come again because we thought it would be a continuation of the last phase of the synod that they had in October last year. But this morning, I did call somebody who was there, and he did tell me, unfortunately, peace was not discussed. It was not touched. They didn't talk about polygamous marriage and whatsoever. But in October, on the 14th, when the synod, is it on October? Yes, October 14th, there was a word that was passed, October 14th, by Cardinal Fridolin. Cardinal Fridolin is the president of the bishops in Africa. The so-called SECAM is the president. He had a press release in the Vatican. And what he said was that the church in Africa is still looking for ways and means of devising a way through which they can help those people who are in polygamous relationships to be admitted back to the church. So I called him this morning again, and he tells me that is the position as it is. They are waiting for us. Me and you are here discussing this to come up with ideas, ways through which we can accompany these people. So that is the position. And what was discussed about polygamy was only last year. This year, nothing has been touched. And this is the reason we are here, so that as we bring our discussions back forth, we can help to put down something so that we can help those people in polygamous situations on the best way to get ready with their wedding gown so as for them to be readmitted to the banquet.
Thank you very much, Sister, for that update. Out of courtesy, I will ask Dr. Odinga, do you have anything to add to what Sister Katunge has mentioned?
No, she's she has been articulating very well the position of the Catholic Church, so I would have nothing to add to that. She has articulated very well the position of the Catholic Church. And that position, even what she has said last, means that the position persists. However, I still urge people to, as she said, to talk about this and come up with a way forward. But I was even surprised that this came up from the unit on family and marriage and family, because the discussions I've been seeing in the past have not taken this as an issue. It's a non-issue, so nobody wanted even to bring it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Okia.
Akinyi, if I may say something.
Yes, please.
You see, I think, and I feel that as much as we are trying, like to say, we need to devise a way through which we should accompany these people. It's time that we become practical. It's time that I don't know, someone said that let's not get what was given to us as it is, but we can, in a way, contextualize it without tampering with the doctrine of the Catholic Church. Because the position of the church, like, try to tell us, well, you can be admitted, but you have to follow some conditions, like do away with one or two and keep one. But still, there's a problem. The 1, 2 who are left are also facing challenges. So we are trying to see what is the best way that we can devise to have everyone feel at home in the Catholic Church. Because Pope Francis is the Pope of inclusivity. He wants everyone to be on board. He doesn't want anyone out. And now we are here discussing this, but I'm sure before the close of the year, through the power of the Holy Spirit, something's going to happen. And we'll have a way through which then we can say everyone belongs. It doesn't matter where you are and who you are, but at least we will have done something to have everyone feel at home in the Catholic Church.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Katunge. Very aptly put. Father Matthew Adetitloye, you have the floor.
So thank you so much. I'm very happy to be part of this forum. And thanks to Dr. Dinga and Sister Katunge. Now, for me, I want to come in from another point of view when it relates to polygamy. I'm a parish priest, and I've had to face some challenges as regards this. I give two scenarios. One, an old man who had 4 wives, and it was getting old, and at some point, he really felt he wanted to participate in the sacraments. He comes to Money Mass every day, and he participates in many activities of the church. Now, it was at a point, I think the time we started having this discussion, he was already about 80 years old. So we called some priests who were in charge of the marriage tribunal and the diocese and all that. And then, of course, it was said that he's no more sexually active at that age. The wife, of course, also. And so we had to call a family meeting, call the wives, the children also, because at this point, the children are the one taking care of him. And so let it not be that, okay, when we tell him you pick one wife, and then maybe the wife who will pick will be the mother of the ones who are not the ones actually supporting him economically. So we had to do a lot of catechesis, and it was quite easy. The children, they understood. He picked the eldest wife. He regularized this marriage in the church and all that. And at the end, I'm coming from the Yoruba part of Nigeria. What a lot of people are fighting for at the end is that, will I be buried in the church? Which, because if you are polygamous, you cannot be buried in the church and all that. Sometimes they don't even care much about, okay, whether I receive the sacrament, the communion or not. And the second scenario is I have a burial tomorrow, and it is a woman, the first wife, who married to a man who eventually got married to another woman. So 2 wives. She comes to church once in a while and all that. And then, so eventually when she died last week, Sunday. And the first thing the family were trying to do, the children were coming. She's just 62 years old. And they were saying, please, Father, we want this woman to be buried in the Catholic way. And I'm like, okay, she's not a communicant. And then, so I started consulting some canonists in the diocese to say, okay, fine, what can we do in this situation? She is the first wife, but then she's not a communicant. And so one of the canonists told me, if she was baptized, then there is something that I learned during my theology days in Tangaza from Father Patrick Ryan, who said that pastoral considerations. There are things we call pastoral considerations. So each case, like what Mr. Azuzu said the other time, that if you have 100 polygamy cases, there are 100 different cases, and you have to treat them differently. And so we said, okay, fine. If this woman was baptized, then we can start looking at the second option. And the canon law, of course, canon 1176 already says that the first condition to be buried in the church is to be baptized. And then, of course, to be regular with the church. And so polygamy does not permit that, because, so when we now found out that actually the woman was not actually baptized, then it became, again, raised another problem. And the family were really insisting and begging. And to the point they told me, can you please let us put the coffin outside the church while the mass goes on in the church, just to bring her to the church. Let her be in the church compound. You celebrate the mass, the corpse is outside the church, and then, but I consulted here and there, and they said, no, it's not known in the Catholic Church, this kind of thing. So for me, the condition of polygamy has been there, and the church, I think, has found solutions over the years by treating each case with its own merit. And in fact, I've said it before, even in my parish, not quite even a year, but I've decided, because of this case again, to re-catechize the people and keep talking about it, as Sister Katunga has said the other time, that we must keep reminding the people that this is the position of the church, and if you want to belong inside, these are the conditions. And so I'm not looking at a point where the church, whether we do synodality of anything or whatever, that we will change. Are we going to change the Bible? Even if we change the canon law, we change the policies of the church, we're not going to change the Bible. But then we can have what is called the pastoral consideration and take each case according to its merit. The canon law has its own policies, but says that there are pastoral considerations that can be taken when we can avoid scandals. For instance, if the woman was baptized and is the first wife, you could consider, if she was active in the church and very known and all that, and she's very active, then we can say, okay, fine, for this reason, we can allow her to be buried in the church. And the day of the burial, we have to do, of course, a lot of catechesis also for the people, the reason why this case was allowed. So for me, I think this is just my own perspective, and also questions that I'm still asking. How do we keep, attending to each of these cases by their own merits that is caused by the case of the polygamous relationship? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Father Matthew. Those are very real and practical examples of the theological and pastoral considerations that pastoral agents have to take on the ground. Thank you for that. Over to you, Father Thaddeus Anyaigbu. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm sorry I wasn't at the beginning of the presentation. I just want to make an input with regards to your question that was asked on how to treat the other wives after the man probably must have chosen one of the wives. What will now be the fate of the other wives? And sister responded by saying that it now depends on how, from what I got from what sister said, the other wives could be taken care of and all of that. But there is an angle I want to come in from. It is not just enough to dismiss the wives. Of course, the wife should be dismissed. Okay, sister put it this way, that the other wife should be taken as a sister. the man should take the other wife as sister. Of course, when we read Canon 1148, which talks about the situation of polygamy, the canon says that when he receives baptism in the Catholic Church, a non-baptized man who has several non-baptized wives at the same time can retain one of them after the others have been dismissed, if it is hard for him to rebel with the first one. The same is valid for a non-baptized woman who has several non-baptized husbands at the same time. Of course, there is this angle of dismissal, but we need to take note that this has to be done according to the regulation of the local ordinary. It's not just about dismissing them. There is an aspect of charity, there is an aspect of natural equity, and there is also an aspect of justice. So the church considers this aspect, natural equity, justice, not just charity in the sense that the man is doing it out of charity. I mean, taking care of the other wives out of charity. No, there is an aspect of justice because there are situations whereby when the other wives are dismissed, what's happened? Many of them now go into prostitution to take care of themselves. Imagine a situation of, let's say, they have been into this union for more than 40 years, 50 years. When the man is 60 and the woman is probably 50 and all of that, and one of them receives baptism and takes one of them to church to contract marriage, canonical marriage. And you now tell the man to dismiss others or to turn them to sister, and he can just go out. I mean, he can send them out or build house for them outside or just let them be and all of that. Taking care of them includes providing their needs. Of course, they are not going to live in the same room, but they can be in the same compound. The needs of the women should be met following the stipulation of the local ordinary. By local ordinary, according to Canon 134, we mean the diocesan bishop, the vicar general, the episcopal vicar, any of them. What stipulation is it in the diocese? This has to be done following the local custom, following the cultural and economic condition of that area. Following the economic condition of the area in the sense that how is it done in that particular area? What is the civil legislation in the region where it is happening? This will help the church to be just. This will help the church to bring in the aspect of natural equity because we are dealing with human beings. That aspect of moral is also important so that they will not be seen as people who are rejected in the society, so that they should not be seen as people who have no place again, even in the church. So that's the angle I'm coming from. Of course, there is that cessation from any sexual intimacy because there is no longer bond, there is no marital bond. There is no marital bond, but justice demands, natural equity demands that their support, there should be that economic, cultural, and moral support given to them. And this should be done according to the stipulation of the local ordinary, paying attention to the local custom. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
actually,
very
I want to say something on that in relation to what Tadeus has said. Thank you, Father. And maybe when we started, there's a video that I showed, and I said the process took 5 years before that man agreed with 2 wives of whom he was to choose to be the wife to take to church to exchange the vows with. Now, the understanding is very clear in the sense that equity and justice have to be applied. And actually, this has nothing to do with the church. The role of the church is actually to help them understand what they're supposed to do. But at the same time, the man should know that he should provide for his wife. In the case of what I showed first, the women had equal share of the property of this man before he chose the wife that he wanted, because this is very important. Otherwise, someone is going to suffer out of, the choice that the man is going to make, if at all they are not provided for. But I also want to say something. I think it was the person who spoke before Father. It's all about case to case. Each case is taken on its own merit. But I have a question, and this, again, we need to think out together. Is the problem of polygamy sex? In the sense that we say this man was 82 or 92 years old, he was not active sexually. And the church decided, that was Matthew, yeah, I remember that was Father Matthew from Ghana. If the man is not active sexually, then he can be allowed to solemnize the marriage in the church with one woman and then leave the others. Or is the problem the fact that even if he's not sexually active, he still has 3 wives? He will not be said, because he's not active, then you can give the 3 wives because there's nothing he can do. Is the problem the issue? Is the problem being, sexually active? Or is the problem the position of the church in relation to what it calls for in marriage as such? Of course, I agree, each case on its own merit, but we have to look at what is the aim, what is the end of what we are saying, it's one man, one woman, until death do us apart. Does it mean that then if this man is not active, then now you can choose the other woman and live with the rest as your wife still? There's so much that's left to be decided. And I think as pastors and pastoral agents, when you go to this, let us just be on the point and get to understand before you make any decision, this is what the church dictates. I know cases, even the country I come from, where some pastors have agreed and accepted, and they've taken one wife to marry the man, and the rest still remain with the man because the man is not active anymore. Suppose tomorrow a man comes who is 25 or who is 30 years and says he's not sexually active and he wants to marry one wife and remain still with the others. What will the church do? And if we take each case on its own merit? Maybe there are some men who are 82 years and they're active, others who are 35, they're not active. So it's complex, but we'll get a solution with time.
Thank you, sister. We have 2 more hands up and then we shall run to the close of the session. We have a user under the name Thomism 101 from the United Kingdom. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I want to appreciate the speaker so far. It's been very erudite, but I have to say that I was really hoping to leave this session with answers to questions, because when I saw this poster put up, I was really excited, because funny enough, just prior to this, maybe a week ago, I was listening to a Catholic YouTuber, and I use that phrase loosely. I'm sure those of us who are Africans on this forum would appreciate the light in which our African bishops are spoken of in a respectful manner when it comes to standing up to the church on these issues of marriage and sex and homosexuality and things like this, moral theology. But this speaker, on this occasion, made this reference to the African bishops kowtowing in some way or other. And I'm shocked. This can't be right. Because, sorry, a bit of background. I'm in Nigeria. I'm calling from the United Kingdom. I'm joining from the United Kingdom, but I'm very proudly Nigerian. And I was raised in a monogamous setting. So polygamy was very remote for me. And I remember growing up as a child, as a teenager, there were just a handful, 1 or 2, gentlemen or older men in the parish. I grew up in a very large cathedral. So these things were spoken of. And sister, I think it was sister who posed the question about how often are these issues, how often are these issues raised in homilies at mass? And I remember at my parish, more of, quite often this was spoken of, because, as we know, it's part of our African culture. You see, it is not unique to Africa, because I'm in the armed forces and I work a lot in the Middle East. This issue of irregular marriage, I'm happy in Kenya you have Muslims and Buddhists and Hindus. We have half of our population in Nigeria is Muslim, so we know what their religion, So those of us who, I would like to address Dr. Odinga, not in a. So please forgive me, sir. Your tone, I don't want to leave this session with more questions than answers, because the tone, you appear to have posed more questions than provided answers. So I would like to, challenge you in a kind, Christian way, to put your flagpole somewhere, because you use certain phrases, like, you made reference to what does it mean to be an African Catholic, and then you say something about marriage being forever. Catholic marriage is not forever, So, it is a unique problem. This polygamy is a unique problem. My father-in-law, as I mentioned, growing up, it was very remote to me until I married into a family. My wife is one of 30 children. My father-in-law had 4 wives. Thankfully, prior to his death, he regularized his marital situation, and I don't know how he dealt with the other wives. So that's an issue. Father Tadio just spoke about the social aspect of looking after those people and catering for them. I think he did that quite well, but I don't know the details. But I think he who comes to Christ has to come to Christ on Christ's terms. And it's, it's an issue, yes. I think Father Isaac, from Ghana spoke about, case to case. The church has done a lot about enculturation and has absorbed a lot of things over the centuries, like, using of Christmas trees and all of those things. We're told those were pagan things, but we've now Christianized them. Those who are from my part of the country, Nigeria and the Igbos, my people used to kill twins. They thought it was demonic. We used to kill twins until a Christian, I think she's Presbyterian, Mary Celeste, came from Scotland and changed that. So this is culture. Suppose my people decided, no, we will continue killing twins. Will we now say this is part of being an African Christian? We have to kill twins. There are certain things we have to get away from. Sadly, I made reference to when I was a teenager. I am shocked. As a child, I was thinking, oh, of course not. This thing will graduate over. I'm in my late 50s and I'm nearly 60. And I was thinking that by now, polygamy will be the thing of the past. I think it's, Dr. Odinga as well spoke. It's not going away. I'm shocked to see young men today in their 30s, 40s, still taking 2 wives. This is shocking to me. It's just shocking, but it is something that probably will not go away. So I would like, anyone can respond, but Dr. Odinga, I would like to challenge you, because I would like us to leave with answers that we can, that can go to the synod. We are either Catholics or we are not. I mentioned the Middle East. There are people who, Kuwait is a country. I'm currently there now, and there's a gentleman who I know who joined the church. He had 3 wives as a Muslim, and he had to. I don't like to use the word dismiss, but they any person who takes on more than 1 wife in any culture, be it African traditional culture or Islam, you have to be able to look after. You can't be a pauper and take 4 wives in Islam. You have to be able to look after them. So if you're going to to take one as the main wife, you would look after them. So it's something that happens. Even in my parish in the United Kingdom, this issue, they don't have polygamy in the UK, but this issue of divorce and remarriage, I have a parishioner, Englishman, who is adamant that this needs to change. The church is not going to bend for you. So being an African Catholic doesn't mean that, the church is going to, what are we expecting? Fiducia supplicants. Are we watching and waiting for a time when, 2 men stand at the altar? Is that what we, is that European Catholicism? So please, I would like us, it's not, I don't know the way forward. I don't know if anyone does. I was hoping, as in my childish, naivety, that this will fade away, but it's not fading away. It's something we have to deal with. And the only positive thing I've heard here is case by case, because what I hadn't considered, where the speaker from Ghana, the priest from Ghana, said some of these women are in these relationships, in these arrangements, by no fault of theirs. Sadly, they get, they get pregnant and they have to be absorbed into a family, a second or third wife. This sort of thing, can be dealt with, on a case by case basis. But I almost asked, I didn't want to sound disrespectful, but I almost asked, are we all Catholics? Are we all Catholics on this forum? So please, I just wondered, if there was any way that I could ask Dr. Odinga. I wonder what his questions are. What if he had questions for the synod? What does he propose? What way forward? If it was down to him, if he was chairing one of the subcommittees, because I want us to leave here with solutions. What would he propose as the way forward? Because he appears to have, misgivings, but he's asked more questions and provided answers. And I mean this, Dr. Odinga, very respectfully, I really do, among us. But I don't want to leave here with more queries than answers. Let us prefer answers. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Before I give Dr. Odinga the floor, a bit of housekeeping. This has admittedly been a very interesting conversation, but we are running out of time. So we will conclude by the hands raised up now. So there is Mrs. Bridget Itsueli, then there is Mr. Vincent, Professor Chioma, and Mr. Asuzu. We shall conclude with Mr. Asuzu and end the discussion and call it an evening, an afternoon, or a morning from wherever you're coming from. So Dr. Odinga, you have the floor, and then we shall follow that order of the hands raised up and conclude. I shall kindly request that we stick to a minute in each of our inputs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am very open to challenges. Very, very open. And don't feel offended for the challenge. I think this is a very, very complex issue. And if you want one answer from me as an individual, I would say it is not impossible to be a polygynist and to be a Catholic. If you want an answer, a direct answer. Unless we want to end up in a situation where we are saying you are a monogamist, but you can go to the red light district and come for confession. Or you are a monogamist and you can go to have concubines and then you come for confession. I think that is a direct answer that I can give right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Odinga. Mrs. Bridget Itsueli, it's good to see you again. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I just listened to Father Matthew Adetiloye, and I liked what he said about each case must be taken on its own. And then I listened to Father that has Thomism on his, the priest that just spoke, and that we're creating more questions and no answers. And then Sister Jane, I think it was, came up with more questions that we should answer based on what Father Matthew said. Is it about sexuality? Is it about being active sexually? So what is it? What I have always had a problem with is, number one, this law of polygamy affects women. Women are victims more than the men. And until we have a solution where men are also the victims, then it will end. Because Father said, the last priest that spoke, said there are young men of 30 who are still getting married, 2 wives. Clearly, they have known the teaching of the Catholic Church. Clearly, everyone knows whether you are a pagan or not. And therefore, what we have been doing in the church is not a solution. The man is allowed to continue with one wife. Where is the equity there? And all the women are asked to leave. Is it possible, if it's about sexuality, that this man should go celibate? Anybody that wants to be a polygamist, that wants to be a Catholic, must give up the wives, and he himself give up getting married to anybody. That's the law. That's the only way it can work. He will have to decide. Maybe he'll go and live in fornication. If there's equity, no woman is a victim, and he must look after everyone, and he must take a vow that he's going to be celibate until all the women die, you know? And if it's, I know it sounds very extreme, but really and truly, we have to stop this thing because it's continuing, rather than find a way of just making it easy for the men to continue. It's not the women that are polygamists, it's the men. They are the ones who introduce it. What will be the sanctions against them? Right now, there's no sanction. He is lucky, he chooses one. And yet he is the causer of the problem. Until we find out the causer of the problem, how to deal with the causer of the problem, we are not talking. That's the thing I think about this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Itzweli. Mr. Vincent, you have the floor. Kindly let's all stick to the 1 minute.
Thank you. And I want to thank all the speakers who have spoken, also Sister Katunge, Dr. Dinga, and everybody else. My issue revolves, because the discussion here is polygamous situation in the context of the Catholic Church. From where I sit, marriage is a sacrament. And if it's a sacrament, how do we live the sacramental life as a couple? Does it allow for an addition? We understand the compassion of Christ. He wants to have everybody in. But then, I think, whether we're talking about the synod or not, this takes me back to where we began, the Vatican Council II. It wasn't very easy, and still, it is not easy. There are those who accepted it, and we are moving on, and there are those who say, no, we cannot continue this way, and they moved out of the church. What is the aim? There is nobody that would come into the Catholic Church without knowing the teachings of the Catholic Church, first and foremost. Because marriage in itself is a sacrament, a covenant, lived between a couple. And if the man chooses to have more than one wife, then there's a problem. And this problem is not the church. It is created by the individual who makes this decision. I wish we will be talking of our faith in a manner that reflects what was intended from the beginning. Because the issue of being sexually active or not, and I want to pose it here, even for priests and nuns, would you be admitted to profess your call if you are not sexually active? I do not know of any nun or priest that has been accepted to be ordinated for ordination who is sexually inactive. So this is not about sex. It is about living the Christian doctrine. And that is a doctrine that we need to look at. The issues of sacramental lives, the issues of compassion, all those exist. Yes, the church, the mother church can find a way of bringing them, caring for them. But to say that now, I know even, okay, the diocese I come from, and this is Kenya, and this is in open. One man who had 40 wives
finally, before his death, celebrated, accepted. That was, again, based on the advice of the ordinary in consultation with the Vatican. And he was allowed to solemnize his marriage in Homa Bay Diocese. That happened. So yes, whereas the canon law talks about each on his own merit, that merit must really be determined through very, very clear teachings of the church without faulting anybody. But we are also quite aware that we have very good priests, very good nuns from polygamous marriages. And that is a fact that we cannot run away from. So if the church would want to think of accepting a man to choose at one stage of their marriage life to wed one and to dismiss others, then that would be, I think, an absurdity in the church, first and foremost. Why do I say absurdity? We are opening the Pandora box. Who knows the next synod? Then we'll be talking about this issue that has been kept under the carpet in the Catholic Church for many years. Catholic priests to marry. It is something that is in reality affecting the fragility of the church already. So we really need to think through these things and put ourselves in the perspective. What did Christ intend from the beginning? And if we put our heads together as a church, then we cannot go wrong. Already we are dealing with blessing of same-sex what? Marriages, which was really denounced in the Catholic Church in the African context. So what makes this one now an African culture? I'm sure I'm above my 1 minute, so I'll stop there. But this is something that really needs time to be discussed and looked at through and through.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that input. Professor Chioma, and then we shall close with Mr. Michael Asuzu.
Thank you very much. I want to once again thank all the speakers and all the contributors of this very interesting topic on polygamy. I want to look at it that everyone had, we have all spoken and said one thing or the other. We are here trying to look at what is the truth. What did Jesus said? He said, it's all about the truth. I emphasize again, it's all about truth. What is this truth? So based on that and what people have contributed today, we look at this. How do we prevent this thing from occurring? And for it will be in a continuum. Continue from prevention to a continuum of management and control. So that we prevent these things through catechesis in the church, through telling the young people, this is this, marriage is sacred, and this is the way the Catholic Church is saying it, this is the way it ought to be. To the people along the continuum, due to one reason or the other, who had gone ahead to do what they wanted to do, and yet want to come back. And there's something that out of today that pained me so much. That is the second case that Father Matthew Adetiloye said. Well, the aspect that pained me is that this woman was not baptized, and she comes to church, and nobody, she comes to church, and she died without being baptized. That is the aspect that is paining me. It is paining me. And I'm thinking within myself. So there are so many people that come to church and they are not baptized. And they are not in the catechism class. Not even talking about, they are not even baptized. And we know the consequences. And we know what Jesus says. We know what baptism stands for. We know the meaning of baptism. It's a sacrament. So that is the aspect. And so we go back and think about within ourselves, the societies that we belong to in the church, The CW and that, there are people who come, they're not baptized. Wow. That's where it starts from. Because if this woman has been baptized, it's a different thing altogether. So from there, we see how we control some of this behavior. And based on what Father Tedol said, equity, justice, we put psychotherapy. We put, how do we give psychotherapy? How do we make sure that everybody is happy, even at all the decisions? It takes a long way, like Sister Leonida said, for us to reach that point. But the truth is that the marriage in the Catholic Church is a sacrament. And all of us, by the grace of God, should and will adhere to it. And once again, I want to thank everybody for contributing. The unit will continue, and we will get back and come back again with these excellent discussions. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Professor. Mr. Michael Asuzi, you have the honor of making the last input of this session. Kindly, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. As I said again, I talk like a very lay person. I have a vocation to be an ordinary person, a very ordinary person in the church. I want to suggest an answer to the question the young man who says he's Nigerian and he's wondering where we'll end up, where this will end up. It will end up exactly as Jesus has planned it, as he guarantees it will be. The Catholic Church. It doesn't matter what any pope or bishop or cardinal does, or any priest or religious or lay person like me. The Catholic Church will be there until the end of time. The truth that we're looking for. I will encourage everybody not to fashion a church after his own head about his annoyances or disappointments. God created the male and female. He didn't give every character of God the same quantity to a woman and to a man. He made them different. And we can't change any of them. Catechesis is the answer to what we are talking about. Primary prevention. We have been there long enough that everybody who becomes a Catholic will be a Catholic. So if we are looking for where the fault is in all of us. So nobody should be looking somewhere else for it. How can somebody be in the church for years, dies at 80-something or whatever age they say, 60-something, and is not baptized? Is it the fault of anybody other than us or the people who are there with them? So we should tell people the truth about Christianity clearly, respecting all the cultures that exist. If you are Hindu, fine. If you are secular humanist, fine. If you are Igbo, fine. If you are Muslim, fine. Stay there if that's what you want to be. But if something has happened to you, you want to become a Christian, that's an event. We can't say, no, nothing has happened. To become a Christian is a mystery. It's a mysterious thing that has happened. A new thing has happened. So you have got to consider all you have been before, the context of what has happened now. So if you are polygamous, before you are not a Catholic, decide to become a Catholic. Something mysterious has happened. Don't bring what you have been before. Consider whether you want to be or you don't want to be. If you want to be, then you bring all those things in the light of the new grace. And think about it and take the new decisions you need to take about it. So I'll encourage all of us to learn to respect other cultures, learn about this Christ we are talking about and what he said about his church, and follow it. I was following it with a young Catholic who was a student of mine at the university. He was even a leader. He goes out, he's been criticizing the Catholic Church, blah, 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 blah. So 2 days ago, I engaged him in a WhatsApp dialogue. He was quoting for me, Catholic says it's one, but is it one? They're not different. So I told him to go and read chapter 17 of John's Gospel. When he reads it, he can come and talk to me whether Jesus talked in this way he's talking or not. So, and I told him, listen, whether there are people causing division inside the church, which is the secular humanist way. Secular humanism is telling people Don't condemn Catholic Church or any and run out of it. You won't win. Stay there until you spoil it. So all the people who want to spoil the Catholic, they are right inside the church now. They are not outside, though. So we must know them. All the secular money's agenda. I said, those, if you read chapter 17 of John's Gospel, well, Jesus speaks about one church and prayed against people who are going to be causing division. So if you think that causing division is all right, I will tell you solemnly, we have a duty to pray for all those who are causing division, whether they're inside or they're outside, and to minister to them all the time until they come to the light of God's grace. God bless you. He replied and said, my daddy and my professor, I agree with you now. So that's what we should be doing. People shouldn't be angry with themselves or with anybody or find fault anywhere. Fault is in human nature that has fallen from grace. We should find out what Christ says and go with it. Whether Bishop agrees with it or Archbishop or anybody, we will follow what Christ says, and we're going to get there. That's where we're going to end up. Nobody should be anxious. Thank you, and over.
Thank you very much, Mr. Asuzu. Thank you, thank you, thank you, our speakers this evening, Sister Katunge and Dr. Dennis Odinga Okia. Thank you for your inputs. Thank you for graciously having this discussion with us and engaging our participants on the session. I now wish to close the session. For those who are new to this webinar, this is what PactPan does. And if you're interested in joining the organization, you are welcome to visit our website, pactpan.org. We have various units. And we hope to have further discussions in this same breath. Sister Katunge, I can see your hand is up.
Yes, I thank everyone too for being here, and thank you, Akinyi, for being our able moderator, and all those who participated and all those had issues and their own compliments that you made. And I hope through Professor Choma and your team, this is not the end of the discussion. We'll have another discussion so that we can carry on with, try to get a solution to the problems that are facing us. As we also thank Dr. Dennis. I also welcome all for the next palaver on human trafficking, which will be taking place on 30th of this month. Not polygamy, but human trafficking, which is also something that we need to get to understand and to know. Thank you, our able moderator, for the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Dennis, any closing remarks?
I'd like to thank you, first of all, and then everybody else who attended. I speak what I think, and I also speak what I believe. And I hope somebody has not been rubbed the wrong way. When I was invited here, I was assured that we are going to discuss this thing in an open and looking for a way forward. And I hope many of us who have attended this have found some way forward. We cannot have answers to this complex. It's a complex issues, a complex issue that we cannot say in one night, in an hour or two, we can have answers to every aspect of it. It's very complex. It's very African, but it's also very much an issue in the Catholic Church, and that is why it has made its way into discussions within the Synod for synodality. Thank you very much once again, and I thank everybody for participating.
Thank you. On behalf of the PactPan Leadership Unit, as well as the Marriage and Family Life Unit, I bid you all good morning, good night, and good afternoon from whichever part of the world you're joining us. Be blessed.